War-torn and battle-driven, the blue demon fights always. Want to make your kits look awesome? Let's do some step-by-step weathering. Not So Average Builder is brought to you by these great retailers. There'll be promo codes in the description below. To start off, we're going to use the Mr. Weathering Color oil and their solvent. And you can do two things with this. You can do what I'm doing, where you do a full-on cover everything wash and then wipe off any excess. Or you can get a fine point brush and simply, dab it in the recesses and the panel lines and use it as a panel line wash. That makes this stuff an alternative to the Tamiya enamel wash that you use for panel lining. So if you don't have that and you have this stuff lying around, it is a really good alternative. Plus it dries pretty matte, so if that's the look you're going for, then that is an even more of a plus. While I'm going through this, it is pretty straightforward. Like I said, you just cover everything. We will cover removing the excess and blending it in a few minutes. But the beautiful part about this stuff is because it's an oil, it has an extremely long working time, where the Tamiya enamel wash does not. So that can play to your strengths and your disadvantages. That is why, as a modeler, you need to have multiple different techniques and tricks and tips to use in your kits. And knowing when to use them and why to use them and where to use them is also another point. Once you get that finished, let it dry completely. That is the hardest part to wait for. Just let it dry. You'll know when that hits because it will go completely matte. Once you do that, you're going to need a Q-tip. A lot of Q-tips. And you're going to take your solvent, just the straight solvent, just dip the tip of the Q-tip straight in there. It'll soak it up, push off as much excess as you want. And now here's where you have creative freedom. You can take off as little or as much as you want. I wanted more of that gunky, war-torn roughness, so I didn't take off much. So I touched the thinner part of the Q-tip and just did a swipe. And then all of that thinner that was put on there, no pressure, but just that little amount of thinner allowed me to blend and smooth and give streaks. And you can vary that amount of streaking to your liking based on how much thinner you use. So because this stuff is oil based, that thinner reactivates the oil and it can completely take it off. So you can do a panel line wash and you can be as messy as you want. Now I will have to say, you will go through a metric ton of Q-tips using this method. Because it does put a lot of oil on there, it is going to eat through that. And if you find that the Q-tip's not taking much off, you do what I just did. Take a little bit of that thinner, the Q-tip with the thinner on it, just swipe it, and then you can go to town with the rest. And a little bit of that thinner goes a long way. While this is going on, I wanted to take a moment to say thank you to my awesome patrons of the channel. If you'd like to become a patron of the channel, go to patreon.com/NotSoAverageBuilder. I have a ton of tiers to choose from, and anyone who signs up gets a free sticker sent to their door. And there's also some cool little extra stuff for those that hold a certain tier for a long period of time. Now this can be a time-consuming step, but I promise you it is worth it. The camera does not do it justice as far as the amount of streaking. I did put some pictures at the end, and it's still, for some reason, my editing software doesn't want to give the quality that it deserves. But I promise you, if you try this step out and you stop there, even if you just stop there, it makes it a world of difference. Just gives that kit that more, realistic look. And you can see here it's kind of shiny because the wash is still drying. And this is what it looks like on the rest of the kit. It really toned down the blues and made them more grimy. Now we're going to start on some chipping. So I don't recommend to use lacquer paints for chipping because they dry stupid quick, but I wanted to match the color as close as possible, and in this case I just used the base blue, the bright blue, and mixed it with some insignia white to kind of give it that two-toned chipping effect. And what I mean by two-tone chipping effect we will get into here in a minute. But you're just going to go through and pick random spots, and with the smallest brush stroke possible, they're not even showing up on here because that's how small they are. You want to go over and make it look like there's little scratches. Because if you look at any real world application, any time that there's scratches, they're not necessarily always to the metal. Sometimes they just chip the paint and there is an underlying color, or it knocked off some of the dirt and grime and it gave it more of a lighter color back to the original tone. So there's a couple of ways you can do this. You could even go with the base blue. Because we did this wash, it will stand out. I wanted to stand out a little bit more though, so I wanted to mix the bright blue and the insignia white. Here's also a little tip for you. Two actually. Stay towards the edges. If you want to do big panel scratches, it is very easy to overdo it, and on the next step that we go through, I kind of went a little overboard. But go over your decals with the chips, because you want them to look painted on, and if there's something that really ties them to the armor, it's going to do that. Now here's the second part of the two-tone chipping. I'm going to take that super bright metallic silver from Mr. Hobby, and you're going to go over the chips that you just did. Now I know that the camera looks a million times better, and it is because I got a new phone. So I'm hoping that this really ups the value of my videos and it helps you see what I'm talking about. But you always want to go over the chips that you did, the two-tone chipping, so that way it gives it more of that depth, that realism. And you want to leave some of the underlying chip that you did to begin with visible. You don't want to cover it up completely. And what that does is it gives you that earthy realism, because if you look at a tank that's been in battle, the paint has chipped away and you can see some of the metal, but there's still some of the paint visible. And I'm just going over the edges. And another tip, I would probably stay as close to the edges as possible. I wanted to give on this kit, where I've got the different color panels, they're either newer panels or they've just been replaced, so some of them I didn't even chip at all because I wanted to give it that realism. On the blue, I did really good. When it came to the black, because it was a stark difference, I probably went a little too heavy, and that's what I'm talking about. When you're weathering, always less is more. You can fix this by taking the base color and dry brushing over top of that. And that's what I may end up doing to kind of tie this all back in. I also want to do some Tamiya weathering pigments to give that soot and rust. And I also have another color by the Mr. Weathering colors. I've got the rust color, so I'm probably going to add that on there as well to kind of give it more of that, realism. I know it's in space and there's no oxygen in space, so nothing's going to oxidize, but if you've watched the Seed series, I've not watched Seed Destiny, but in the Seed series they do a majority of their stuff on Earth, so I could probably use that to my advantage and say that they followed them. I have gotten off topic, but I do want to say all of these products that I used I got from usagundamstore.com. So if you want to follow along with this build, and just about everything that I got for this build came from USA Gundam Store, and they pretty much have what you need to make your kits look epic. Nothing I did was expert level. This was all just basic beginner stuff that I used to create this awesome looking kit. So that means that you too can create this epic looking kit. So I want you to be a not so average builder. That's the motto. But have a wonderful day, guys. Bye.